You're listening to Trailblazers.fm, an interview-styled podcast that delves deep into bold conversations with successful Black entrepreneurs and leaders. Join us weekly to learn actionable strategies, valuable tactics, and innovative tools that you can put to use immediately on your journey to blazing your trail. And now, here's your host, my husband, Stephen A. Hart.
Hello and happy Friday to you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Stephen A. Hart. I'm the host of Trailblazers.fm. If this is your first time rocking with us, I just want to say good morning. Thank you so much for joining our live stream. For the past 5.5 years, I've had over 200 amazing conversations with brilliant Black entrepreneurs. And we continue that trend today. Our guest is Julia Rock. Julia is a career and leadership development coach who has helped hundreds of ambitious Black and POC professionals break through career plateaus to secure fulfilling job opportunities. She's a founder and owner of Rock Career Development. And I am extremely excited to have this conversation today. So I'm going to welcome Julia. Good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you doing?
I am blessed and highly favored. I am feeling great this morning. Excited to have you here. Connected with Julia through Twitter.
I love Twitter, man. You just connect with everybody.
Got to love Twitter. So let's just give a good morning big ups. I think I woke up Minda Harts. Minda Harts is here in the morning hanging with us.
Hey,
good morning. Good morning to Ralston from Jamaica. Good morning, Annette up in Canada. This is, we got an international audience hanging with us this morning.
And early in the morning too.
Early in the morning. See, I have two crumb snatchers, Julia, that wake me up bright and early in the morning, right? To get out the door for school. And I figure these are good conversations to have before we start the work day.
Absolutely.
So listen, I am somebody who has started all these conversations off from a place of gratitude. And so, we always start in the same place. I want you to share with us an unexpected blessing that you're most grateful for in your life right now.
Actually just connecting with good people.
Yeah.
When I was first starting in business, I felt like I was struggling to connect with people. And what I have been able to find, especially over the past few months, is that just putting good content out and connecting with people has been such a blessing, because it's not even like getting like money or something. It's just whether it's good counsel, good advice, just a new friend. I'm just grateful for new connections, or new organic connections, especially.
Absolutely. So listen, I shared with you right before we jumped on, I'm a brand guy, right? And I love to acknowledge great branding. And I think you've done a fantastic job with your websites and just your social digital presence. But I want to dial back for a second before we talk about all the resume gems. Tell us a little bit about Julia. Where'd you grow up? Is Houston, born and raised, or?
No, not at all. So I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. I'm from a place called Brownsville. If you're not familiar with where Brownsville is, just listen to any Jay-Z or Biggie song and it's in there. They'll talk about it. My family's originally from the island of Barbados, so I've spent a lot of time there. And so I grew up as a kid in Brooklyn, and then I went to college in Philly and started my work career in the Northeast. So, and then I kept working my way further and further south. And then I ended up in Houston working in oil and gas.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm a Northeastern girl by heart. So
what's when you were younger, what was kind of your draw? What was a passion, an early passion of Julia growing up?
So I had two things that I really wanted to do. I wanted to be a ballerina and I wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't know how those two things were going to come together, but in my head, I was going to be a lawyer ballerina.
You're going to be on your toes in court.
I'm telling you, doing pirouettes and around the judge's table there. So that in my head, that's what I visualized.
Yes.
And now I've done neither of those things.
So what was that thing that you focused on in college?
So in college, I actually focused on finance. So before I got into college, my dad and I were talking about selecting a major, and I was going to be a sports agent. When I was going to college, I was going to be a sports agent. I had just seen Jerry Maguire, and I'm like, man, I'm going to be the black Jerry Maguire.
Show me
the money. And then my dad and I had a real conversation. He's like, hey, so how do you plan on becoming a sports agent? How much money are you going to make as a sports agent? Where are you going to get a job? Who are your connections? And he went down this rapid fire list of questions. And I realized I had done zero research at all. And so he asked me, he's like, do you want to get something that will allow you to be versatile and go into different industries? And so I landed on finance. And that's what I really focused on because I can work. I started my career in financial services. Now I'm in oil and gas. I can do finance pretty much anywhere because someone's always going to want you to tell them 1 + 1 = 2. Even though they can figure it out themselves, they're willing to hire you and pay you a good amount of money to tell them the same thing. So yeah. I'll take it.
Yeah. So what was the experience that kind of led to you saying, hey, you know what? There's a problem over here. What was the idea behind Rock Career Development?
Yeah. So the funny thing is I started doing resumes in college because I was really passionate about, I want to make sure that I know how to get a job and get paid because I was going to be on the cover of Forbes and Fortune and all that. Like that was my whole thing.
You still are.
Well, I mean, I'm working on it. So I started spending a ton of time at the career services office at my college, and I soaked up all the gems that I could. And then somehow friends and family were like, hey, can you take a look at my resume? Can you help me out with this? And I just started helping with that. And so that was back in, say, 2006. So fast forward to 2013. So in that time period, I was just doing it for fun. In 2013, I coached one of my friends to his first 6-figure job. And he's like, hey, I appreciate the free help. But he's like, you've got a lot of knowledge here to just giving it away for free. You should really start to think about charging for it and making a business out of this. And at the same time, I was going to career fairs for my day job to recruit candidates. And I just noticed a stark difference in performance between Black candidates and non-Black candidates. I'm not even going to do the whole POC thing. It was Black candidates and non-Black. I saw there was a stark difference that Black candidates were just not bringing it the way that they should. And you looked at their resumes and it was clear that they had experience, but their delivery wasn't as polished as it should have been. The way that their resumes were put together, they just wasn't as polished. You could sift through it. But I'm like, why is there this difference? Is it just a lack of information, a lack of access to the right people to teach them? And so at that time I said, if I've got this knowledge, I've got an opportunity to help level the playing field. Mm-hmm. And that's really what birthed Rock Career Development. Because I said, I want to make sure that the people who look like me have a fighting shot to secure really good job opportunities, be able to get paid, get jobs that they really want to do. For us to not be resigned to low-level positions for the rest of our careers.
Yeah. So let me pick your brain for a second before we dive deeper here, because there's a fuzzy middle, right? So you're working in finance. There is this thing that you love, that you're good at in helping people with this. How do you transition? Because Rock Career Development didn't just pop up, right? And you say, okay, I'm going to start a company and I'm going to, were you coaching? How did you kind of make this pivot to getting this business off the ground and to where it is?
Yeah. And so, in full disclosure, I'm still working in finance right now.
Great.
But in terms of how I was able to make that shift, what I started to do, I was coaching and writing from 2006 and really just building at that point, just free of charge. And so I continued to do that. And then in 2013,
free of charge
from
so you're getting that experience.
Exactly. So I wasn't asking for a dime, but that was an opportunity for me to just hone my skills, make mistakes. I look back at some of the resumes I was writing in 2007. I'm just like, oh, struggle. But I took that time to just build and just learn. And then in 2013, that's when I really started to get some things off the ground. And I was still just learning at that point because I was navigating my job and then just starting to build my business. So over this time period, what I started to do was connect with other individuals who had done what I had done, and starting to attend conferences, and then also just soaking up knowledge from even my day job and just learning, kind of how professionals function and things that they're looking for. So it's really just been a knowledge building journey and then spending time making connections, because at this stage, a lot of the connections that I have or the opportunities come from relationships that I've been fostering over the past few years. It hasn't been just, one day you pop up and people want you to talk on their podcast or interview or whatever. It's really about nurturing relationships and then becoming a thought leader in the space. So sharing meaningful content. I do my best to share content that will connect with folks so that they're like, hey, this is speaking to me. And I think people kind of skip that part. It's like, well, why aren't people coming to my business? They don't know who you are. They don't know what value you offer. But if you start putting out content, you will start attracting people. And then the other thing that I've done is also shared, whether it's webinars or other free content that, again, continues to get the brand out there. So it's just been a lot of just work in the trenches and relationship building that has helped me to grow the brand to this point.
Absolutely. So were you focused on everybody? Because I know, and we can kind of focus in now on and maybe let's do that. Let's talk about Rock Career Development. Tell us about what the company is and does.
Okay. So when I first started, it was really trying to serve everybody's career development needs. So it started out mainly with resume writing and interview coaching. That's kind of where it started. And I was trying to serve everyone. And then over time, I've continued to build that suite. So it's a full writing service. So you're able to get resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, website bios. So we do all of that. And then it was comprehensive career coaching. So job search strategy, navigating your career when you get on the job. So not just getting the job, but now that you're there, how do you perform at a high level? How do you navigate interpersonal relationships at work, dealing with your boss, performance reviews, moving forward and advancing, et cetera. And then also leadership development coaching. And then I honed in on Black and brown professionals, because while I want to serve everybody, we love everybody, it's really important to me that the people who look like me have opportunities, and I've become very unapologetic about that.
So let me pause you right there.
Yes.
So, and I am a huge believer in this, right? In niching in and serving a very specific audience. How has an understanding that you are going to attract the person that you want to speak to, and you're going to repel everyone else. You've had to repel everyone else. How is that in the process of building a business, right? You're turning away revenue from some. Has that impacted you in a certain way? Do you have the challenge and a doubt about what you did, or you're living in that and saying this is going to be my lane?
You know what? I've done better now that I've gotten specific. And I think that people
say it again, Julia. I need Minda to come on and shake that tambourine right now.
I mean, honestly, I have done better now that I have gotten specific, because when you're trying to speak to everybody, you're not speaking to anybody. And that was my, that was my challenge, that I'm like, I want to speak to everybody. I want to serve all professionals. And it's like, but I can't serve all professionals.
Listen, Julia, this phone is going out. It's connected to a Bluetooth, and I'm like, shut the phone off. Julia and I, right before this call started, we were talking about, just turning off electronics. And in all fairness, and this is real. This is live, right? This is what happens when you go live. I always keep my phone on vibrate, but I was listening to some dance hall music right before we got going, and it was connected to my Bluetooth speaker behind me. So I see the phone ringing, and I'm like, I just silenced it, but it starts playing behind me. So that's real. That's real.
Real life is happening as we go here.
Yeah.
And so to that point, for anyone who's listening, if you're worried about repelling, because I was initially worried about it too. I'm like, oh man, am I gonna not get clients? But I've had clients specifically come to me and said, hey, I came to you because your website spoke to me. It's very specific. I like the fact that you're focusing on Black and brown professionals. It's not all lives mattering, the help. It's like, hey, you want to help us, and I want to work with someone who wants to help us. And again, I've had clients who aren't Black who are just like, hey, I just really like your brand. Are you still willing to work with me? And and I'm not saying I'm turning down people, but it's like my messaging is very, very clear, very specific.
And there's something in what Julia just said. I want everybody listening to cue in on. Her messaging is now speaking to a very specific audience, right? So for those of you who might be building your own, side hustle or your own business, when you speak to everyone, you're speaking to no one in particular, right? You can't I don't speak to my wife in the same way I speak to my daughter, in the same way I speak to my mom, right? There is a different approach and a different message. In the same way, when you're building your business, you have to clue in on, hone in on exactly who it is that you are trying to serve. So I love that. I really love that. And that was something that pulled me into connecting with you and us having this conversation right now. I've benefited from that in my podcast, right? Through sponsorship revenue and certain partnerships, being very specific that I speak to Black entrepreneurs and leaders. And so this is and that was just a gem that, I just really wanted to dial in on for those who are giving thought to, well, I should serve everyone because it's going to expand my revenue. No. And it could be viewed in a completely different way. So I love that. So listen, 2020 happened, right? And while many of us would love to just go back to the way it was before, I think that the entire table has been flipped. Right. Folks are now figuring out where they stand. You have I'm 44, so you have my generation now, that's saying, hey, how do we still remain relevant in the workplace? Because these millennials who have 15 plus years on them, they're coming for these leadership seats, right? So, but some of us have, I know Minda touched on this earlier this week in your conversation. Some of us got some stuff on our resume, right? That's like showing up the 90s on our resume, right? What is, and the resume is one thing, but let's talk about the resume first. And I also want to touch on the other digital things that we need to be mindful of, LinkedIn and our digital footprint, right? Let's maybe touch on a couple of things, key things that we really need to give thought to level up that resume for this next era that we're stepping into post-COVID.
And so I want to make sure, first of all, you don't look 44. So when I say Black don't crack, I mean that's a real thing. But when especially for folks who are more senior in their career, I don't want folks to think that, hey, I'm over the hill and there's not opportunity for me. What professionals at that level, they have a depth of experience. And so what's key on your resume is to highlight that experience as the impact you've been able to create on an organization. What have you been able to do? What achievements, what strategies have you been able to put in place? What results have you been able to deliver? That's really, really, really key. And especially if you're more senior in your career, you may have had a lot of leadership. So being able to build an organization and get them to achieve certain objectives, that's huge, because especially as we're seeking to navigate this new environment and new organizations and remote work and so forth, they're looking for folks who have strong leadership abilities to help navigate these new waters. And so it's important that if you have that expertise, that you're highlighting that as well. The other thing that you can think through is, how can you highlight some digital skills that you have, skills that are more relevant? So, obviously everybody knows how to use Word now. That's kind of a base skill. But if you're someone who has been able to continue to build your digital skills, your technical skills, using new applications and software, knowing how to automate processes, knowing how to drive efficiencies using new programming and software, that's another thing that can help you to level up your resume, because that will show, hey, you can take us into the future, or you can help us navigate this kind of post-COVID environment, hybrid workplace where people working from home, so forth, having to keep touch with people who are in remote locations or around the globe. So those are some of the key things to think about in terms of elevating your resume, especially that leadership portion and making things achievement based. Too often folks are just doing the copy paste and writing their tasks. That I greeted this person, I ran reports, I did whatever, but there's no so what to that. So it's
I can't with this thing behind me, Joe.
I heard it. I'm rolling through though. I'm gonna roll through. But trying to think about not just putting tasks on your resume to say, I did these things. The question is, so what? What is the so what of the work that you've done? And especially for older professionals, if you've got a lot of that expertise, show the so what of all the things that you've delivered, because companies want to see that.
So let me ask you though, because some of us got furloughed last year, and then others of us who didn't get furloughed, right? We got other people's jobs.
Facts.
Right? We got 2 and 3 and 5 additional roles. Mm-hmm. And so when you're like showcase, how much space should we show every last thing that we've done? Because listen, in 2 years, I work in cybersecurity, right? I ended up absorbing another person's role, in addition to launching a podcast for, my brand and doing, other things beyond just my job description. So if I'm going to list the things that I've achieved in my job, I could go one page just on the last 2 years, right? What do you say to showcasing in terms of that messaging within a resume, right? How many bullets? How much should we really be teasing out? And then where does the rest go? Does the rest go in LinkedIn? How do we complement that resume?
So the first thing that you want to think about is your resume theme. You want your resume to tell a singular story. You don't want your resume to come across as you're a project manager, sales rep, janitor, astronaut. You want it to be that you've got a cohesive theme that you're telling. And so to that end, you're thinking about, how do I target this and tailor this resume to tell that story? When you're thinking in that mindset, then you'll realize that not all achievements need to be seen on this document. It's like, what's really relevant to what I'm going after. And that then helps to drive how much content you're putting in there. The other key thing to think about is, when you're thinking about, well, how many bullets do I need to put in? When you think about your job description, companies typically know, like, let's say you're a bank teller. A company typically knows what a bank teller does. You don't need 14 different bullet points saying, I took cash, I greeted customers, I licked envelopes. You don't need all of that, simply because they have that context. So it's really pulling out the key things that you've been able to accomplish and achieve and make major contributions, so that they can see that this is impact that you've created. We want to make sure your resume is selling you as the product, not just telling what you've done. And that can help you to tailor your resume. And then again, thinking relevance. Not all things are relevant for the conversation you need to have. And so if you're like, well, hey, what do I do with all this extra stuff? LinkedIn is a place that you can try to tell a more comprehensive story about you and your career progression, as well as some of your passions. So if you do have a podcast, if you do have other things, that's a place where you can use that summary section to talk a little bit more about who you are as a person, not just what you've done. And then you can highlight, add some skills and accomplishments. LinkedIn has, sections for you to leverage to share more of that content. But your resume is a snapshot. The role for anyone who's listening, the purpose of your resume is to get you an interview. That's what it's supposed to do. That means it's not supposed to tell all the things. You can save some of that for your interview conversation, save that for your LinkedIn profile, but the purpose is to get you an interview. So keeping that in mind to allow you to really narrow and focus that content.
I love that. So let's switch gears for a second and talk about the complement to the resume. Cover letters, other things should follow that resume. What should be submitted when sending in a resume? And now here's another great question. Do we apply for a job with our LinkedIn profile, which a lot of these platforms allow you to do?
So I'll answer the first part about kind of the compliments to the resume. I highly recommend putting together a cover letter. I know it's tedious. I know it's a lot. People hate the, putting it together. But honestly, in a highly competitive market where people have a wealth of skills, as you mentioned, Stephen, so many people have been furloughed. And these are high-level people with a lot of experience, but companies have just had to downsize. Right. What are you going to say that's going to set you apart? And sometimes that cover letter is going to help set you apart because you're able to show your specific career values and how they align with the company. You're able to show how much research you've done about the company, why you're connected with the brand. That cover letter gives you a good amount of space for you to sell additional things outside of your expertise and accomplishments. And so if they're trying to make a decision with people who have equal skill sets and qualifications, that cover letter can potentially give you the edge. So I highly recommend putting that together. One of the other things that can be helpful, depending on the role that you're going into, can be a portfolio website. I know for some folks that I've done, whether it's graphic design, journalism, some of these other spaces, or if you're coming from entrepreneurship back into the corporate space, having a portfolio or a separate website that showcases work that you've been able to do is also really helpful in providing real life context, because everyone can say that they, solved world hunger on their resume, but being able to point to a separate website that says, hey, you can see in real life, here are the companies that I've worked with, here's the impact that I've created. And so those are just some of the spaces. And I forgot the second question. You got to tell me the second question again. Sorry.
And there's something you just said that I want to touch on. As a brand strategist, I speak to everyone about having a website. So I think that's a great point and I'm actually working with, someone right now who is in the architecture realm, and we're talking about that portfolio element for his site. But listen, I think I always say someone searching you on Google and the results they find about you are going to leave them more or less inclined to do business with you or to hire you. A website, you are in control of your own website, right? You're in control of the story you're telling about you, about your brand. And so I encourage folks, you don't have to have this massive corporate site. You don't have to have a business brand like Rock Korea Development, but you could have a simple 3-page site that showcases who you are, tells the story you want to tell, and that thing's going to season at the top of Google, right? And cover up some of the other things that, someone will find about you. Somebody who's looking at you, again, that separates you just a bit from everyone else.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So talking about the digital footprint piece, and we touched on the website, what else goes into this LinkedIn profile, and why LinkedIn, right? I still have a lot of people who just have barely have a profile shot. They don't have a cover. They hardly post anything on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's not your, it's not even our parents' LinkedIn because they weren't on it. But I mean, LinkedIn 5 years ago to LinkedIn today is a completely different platform, and it does so much. But talk to me about your conversations you're having with, your clients about LinkedIn, and how are you guys leveraging that?
Yeah, I mean, if you watch any webinar or listen to any podcast that I've done, LinkedIn is the hill that I will continually die on, simply because it's the largest professional network. And at this point, it's not just professionals looking for jobs. It's companies, it's entrepreneurs, it's startups, it's brands. I mean, there's so many different organizations and pages that are on LinkedIn right now. 90% of recruiters are looking for candidates on LinkedIn. So if you're in the job search and you don't have a LinkedIn profile, your LinkedIn profile is subpar, you're taking yourself out of the running. And so it's so critical that you're using the platform to its fullest extent, because what it also helps to do is flatten organizations. Because, but before LinkedIn, you're asking a friend to introduce you to this person, and then you hope that this person will get back to you, and you're waiting for an email. Now with LinkedIn, it's like you can reach out, you can comment on people's posts at different levels of an organization and get a response back. People who are willing to have a coffee chat with you. So LinkedIn has just kind of blown the doors wide open for organic networking. And so if you're not leveraging that platform, you're missing out on huge opportunities to build your professional brand, your personal brand, your business, etc. And so if you're thinking about developing your profile, it's so important, first and foremost, that you have a photo. I know that people are just like, well, why do people need to see my face? The fact is, if your profile has a photo, I believe it's 21 times more likely, or it gets 21 times more views if you have a photo on your LinkedIn profile. And so it's so important for people to be able to see what you look like. Because think about it. If you're going to go buy a product and the website doesn't have the photo of the product, you're like, well, I don't know what I'm getting. I don't know if I want to get this. It's the same thing with LinkedIn. If people want to connect with you, they want to see that you're a real person. You're not some sort of a troll or what have you. They want to know that you're a real person they can connect with. And then the other key piece is leveraging your headline. You're leveraging your about section, so you can see me there. Having a header photo, because again, you want your profile to stand out. You want people to be drawn to you. You want to be able to have keywords that will allow your profile to come up in searches. All of that takes work for you to fill out your profile. And so that about section, I just want to encourage everyone, when you're taking time to build your about section, don't just copy and paste your summary from your resume. This is a place for you to have a conversation with people and connect with them. So really think about who you are as a person, what you're looking for from the platform. Why should people come and talk to you? And spend time putting that into your about section. And you may find yourself starting to attract more traffic. Are you on mute? Are you on mute?
Girl, love this. Again, look at Julia's profile. Make sure you connect with Julia on LinkedIn, right? There's something you said too about being able to connect with people directly on LinkedIn, which is a fantastic, you're cutting through the gatekeeper to be able to access someone. But be mindful about your approach, just like you would in real life, about Absolutely. How you approach people in DMs.
Absolutely. Don't send the long-winded, hey, let's book a call this week after you tell me 15 different things about your business. Like that's not the right answer.
It is not.
Think about it like it's a social networking platform, and I think people keep missing that portion. Yes, you want to grow your business and your brand, but the fact is it's a social networking platform. People are there to connect, to build relationships. So it's important for you to go about it in the way of trying to build a relationship, starting a conversation, not asking for something. People are so apt to say, well, I'm gonna just shoot my shot. And it's like, that can work in certain places, but depending on who you're reaching out to, you may have to just work on building that relationship. And everything doesn't have to be done overnight. Engage with the person's content. You share meaningful content. Just do things organically. And sometimes people will be more apt to saying, hey, I actually have someone to connect you with. You didn't even have to ask for anything. That has happened to me more than once on LinkedIn, where I've connected with someone and they're like, oh, well, you should talk to so-and-so. I didn't ask them for anything. So you have to think about, this is a social networking platform. It's not a pitch. It's not a pitch competition. It's a social networking platform.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Beyond LinkedIn, beyond your website, is there anything else that you recommend we take care of in terms of, so, and we're talking about LinkedIn. Listen, again, somebody's searching you. If you can leverage your own website and your LinkedIn, it comes up maybe before the gram, right? Or maybe before the other platforms where you're YOLO, right? So give thought to that, right? Somebody is looking for what else they can find out about you. But is there anything else that you're doing or encouraging folks to give thought to as they're preparing for pitching themselves?
I just highly recommend being consistent on platforms so that wherever people find you, that your branding and your messaging is consistent. And so if you're using places like Twitter, that's how you and I connected. If my brand was all over the place on Twitter, I don't know if you and I would be having this conversation. Right. So it's really about keeping your brand consistent on platforms that you're using. So Twitter and Instagram, if you're using Facebook, even if you're using some of these newer platforms. So here's the other thing. If you're thinking about how to give yourself an edge, some of these newer platforms like TikTok and the IG Reels, these are places where, yes, it's a younger crowd, but brands and other places are going to see what kind of following you're garnering, what kind of views you're garnering, etc. So that's another place for you to be consistent with your branding and your messaging. So no matter where people find you, they see that you're a thought leader in the space, or that you have expertise, and that you're clear on who you're serving and what you're trying to deliver. So it's so important to seek to be consistent on whatever platform to use.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about where we can stay connected to you. I'm showing your website, your amazing website here.
Thank you so much. So I do my best to be consistent on all platforms. So obviously my website, it's rockcareer.com. I'm super excited about our resume writing course that we're launching. So for folks who are thinking about writing a resume course, they can actually join the waitlist at rockcareer.com/course. Right. And then folks can connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Rock Career. Or if they want to connect with me personally, they can connect with me on Instagram and Twitter at the Julia Rock, as well as on LinkedIn.
Yeah, love it. Julia, this is a great conversation. There's so much that I've listened to a couple of your conversations recently, and every single time you drop in those gems, and I can tell that you are extremely passionate about the work you're doing, and that's something that drew me into connecting with you. And I commend and I acknowledge you for the work you're doing, for the impact that you're having, and encourage you to keep pushing forward. A couple last questions for you. What are you reading right now?
What am I reading right now? So one of the books that I'm reading is Profit First. And so just because as I'm thinking about my business and how to move forward in my business, and making sure that I have the right income goals and profit goals. So Profit First is one of the books that I'm reading right now. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'm reading. I mean, I've got a couple of books. I'm trying to think of the topics right now, but I also just want to plug some books here. Career Rehab by Kanika Tolver.
Yes,
I love that book for anyone who has got their who's in that space of rehabbing their career or trying to get to that next stage. And then also the Memo by Minda Harts. Those are two books that no matter what platform I'm on, I want to make sure that I pitch those because they're so critical, especially for people of color trying to level up in their career. Yeah,
and I think for both men and women, right? Those are two of my sisters. And the Memo, What Women of Color Need to Know to Secure Your Seat at the Table, is a book that brothers should read equally as much as the women, right? So appreciate you plugging both. One last question for you. What's one action that or Blaze the Nation community who's been rocking with us this morning, no pun intended.
Yeah.
What's one action they should take this week that's going to help them to blaze their trail?
Get clear on what it is that you want. Blazing your trail, it sounds good, but the fact is, what trail are you blazing? What are you trying to accomplish? What does success look like to you? Where do you want to go? And so take that time, make this the week that you get super clear and laser focused on what you want to do, because that will help to guide your steps forward. So don't skip the clarity step. Take some time to gain clarity this week.
Absolutely. One last plug for those who are saying, you know, Julia, I'm still coming out to this climate. I love what you're saying. I maybe can't drop the coins to get the services from you, but you know, I still need help with my resume writing course. I'm teeing you up right now to share with us a course that you have coming up.
Yeah. And so the Rock Your Resume course is coming out. It's the ultimate guide to writing a 6-figure resume. And that course is coming in next month in June. And that is going to have modules that are going to walk you through how to put your resume together. And it's going to be at a lower price point than the writing services that you would procure from my organization. So for a lower investment, you have an opportunity to learn how to take the power back into your own hands to write a document that reflects who you are and the messaging and positioning that you want. So if anyone is interested, you can go join the wait list. Like I said, the course drops next month. Go to rockcareer.com/course. And join us there, and then you will get early access to the beta pricing, and you're going to get bonuses, etc. Don't want to spill all the beans, but you got to make sure that you join the wait list to get access to the course next month.
I love it, Julia. Great conversation with you. Definitely, we'll need to have you back on to talk more. But thank you so very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I just love your work. So I'm so grateful that you picked me to be on the show today. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Absolutely. Enjoy your week, guys. I'll see you back here on Monday. All right. Enjoy the weekend. Thanks for spending time with us today. If we aren't yet connected, let's keep the conversation going on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Now, we grow when you subscribe, share, and invite others to check us out. We believe that others who consume these stories will be moved to make significant changes that have generational impact for many others, both now and well into the future. Blaze Nation, go up today and keep